You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagverdian. Welcome, listeners, back to another episode of the SDSU podcast. I'm your host, Andre Hagverdian. It's been a while since we've had an episode, so I want to thank you guys for tuning back in. We're in the middle of May, wrapping up spring. San Diego State football went through its spring camp that culminated in the spring game on May 2nd. That was held on campus at the practice field. For any of you that made it out, I want to say you guys enjoyed kind of the festivities that came around the game, or the scrimmage is really more of an appropriate term for it, with the stuff that they had on the side practice field with some kids' games, events, booths, a beer garden, all sorts of stuff. I think it was maybe a better event than typically having it at Snapdragon Stadium, where the access to the players is a little bit more limited from field and the seats, and then the ability to kind of set stuff up on the side, and then they had autographs at the end. So all in all, I think it was a good event. There's no spring portal, so things are a little different right now this time of year, where the staff isn't going out and either trying to keep some of their best players who may be getting coaxed with some offers from other teams, or to try to go add new players to fill some weaknesses or some depth issues. So, I think Sean Lewis has said multiple times that he is very happy that there is no spring portal. I think most, if not all, college football coaches agree with that sentiment. So, it's a little bit quieter right now when it comes to roster news, because there really isn't any changes being made. Last year we were getting used to the word general manager when it came to college athletics. San Diego State, Sean Lewis hired their first ever general manager last year, Caleb Davis. This year, they followed it up by hiring an associate general manager, Sam Popper, who was hired a couple months ago. He came over from Michigan. He was a director of recruiting over there. So he has taken a step up in terms of role responsibilities as an associate general manager. And just a few days ago, I had a chance to catch up with Sam. I met him at the spring game briefly. We're able to schedule him to come up for an interview. I had a great conversation with him, get to know his role and where he sees kind of San Diego State fitting in this new landscape of college football. So let's get to our interview with Sam Popper, and I'll be back right after to close it out. We want to welcome Sam Popper, Associate General Manager of San Diego State football, to the podcast. How's it going today, Sam?
Good. Appreciate you having me. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah, welcome to San Diego. Welcome to San Diego State. You've been in this role a few months now. Take us through, how this opportunity came about and how you ended up here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, I was at the University of Michigan as director of recruiting the last 3 years, and I was, really comfortable with, the new staff that, was in place there. And it was just, kind of upon getting the call here and talking with Caleb Davis, our general manager, and Coach Lewis, it was pretty evident that, what they had here was really special and worth being a part of. And I loved kind of, just everything that, the university and the program were investing and building as a staff. And it made the decision to come here pretty easy.
Yeah, we've gotten to know Caleb. We've had him on the podcast. The word general manager in college athletics is a new thing. Coming in as the associate general manager, can you kind of talk about the division of responsibilities between you and Caleb?
Yeah, so the general manager is certainly a changing role, right? Like it was implemented as NIL was kind of informally implemented as NIL was just starting to be a operating procedure, right, in college football. And as you know, the idea of evaluating your roster and managing your collective has grown so extensively. This is almost our way of trying to do something different and getting ahead of the curve. Caleb and I are both going to share really all aspects of the general manager position, right, as it relates to operation within the collective, valuing our roster, contract language, all the negotiations and agent work, etc. And in doing that and being able to split up the roles of the general manager, we now open the door for both of us now to have a role in the high school recruiting process, maybe more than other general managers of other programs. It's interesting as, again, as it's become so big, the general manager role is changing, and in a lot of programs move further and further away from the high school recruiting process. This is kind of our way to try to, not only bring it back, but then have some more hands on deck to do the job, hopefully at a really high level. So one of the funnest parts of the job so far has been, shoot, Caleb's got this huge whiteboard in his office, and we just sit on there and we just collaborate and throw ideas off each other and talk shop and try to put really good plans and processes together. And it's been really, really cool. And I think hopefully it can pay dividends for us.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were the director of recruiting at Michigan. You guys won a national championship, I believe your first year or your
Yep,
second
that's
year
right. Yep,
there.
2023.
Take us through kind of that experience. Michigan is one of the storied programs of college football. So take us through that and then kind of your background before that.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. So I started in the personnel world in 2015. It was Coach Harbaugh's first year at Michigan, and I was a freshman at the university. And I started as a student intern in the personnel department and recruiting, and I was there for 4 years until I graduated. And in that time, after I graduated, I went to Howard University's director of recruiting for a year, and then I went to University of Oregon, where I held the titles of assistant director of recruiting. I worked more with the offense
Right.
in that time, kind of similar to how we have our structure now here with two recruiting coordinators, one in offense and defense. So I did that, and then my second year at Oregon, I was director of recruiting strategy, where I did work with both sides of the ball. And then the next year, I went to the University of Akron, where I was the director of recruiting. This was 2022, and so that's how I got some experience at really seeing Coach Lewis and a lot of the coaches we have here up close from when they were at Kent State in 2022 that year.
Yeah.
After that, I took the same job, director of recruiting at Memphis, and I was there for about maybe 6-7 months before I ended up coming back to Michigan in the role. And that decision obviously was really difficult, but it just kind of made sense and was the right time, I think, for me in my career to go back there. And it was really cool kind of going into that 23 season, because a lot of those players on that team that were now the 5th year, 6th year senior leader captains were a lot of the very insecure freshmen just figuring their way out through college that we recruited through my time as a student, and kind of leaving when they were at that point in their college lives, and then coming back as they were again these big leaders, vocal, mature, pro ready guys. It was really cool to kind of see that transformation and to get to see them from that other perspective. And a lot of the staff members were still there from my time as a student. And it was a really nice moment in your career when you get to kind of come full circle like that. It was a lot of fun. And then, being there kind of for the last, 2 years after that, trying to kind of get the thing, back to that level,
Yeah.
before coming here. It's been a really fun journey. And I feel like what I take pride in about my experience is that I've had really kind of every sort of part of the puzzle. I've been at the highest level competing for national championships. I've been at the FCS level. I've been at the high end group of five. I've been lower end group of five, kind of everywhere in between, different locations, West Coast, South, East Coast, Midwest.
Yeah.
And I'm almost at the point in my career now where I am able to kind of speak as somebody who's been around the block a little bit. And I take pride in the experience that I have. And while I've, kind of gone to around in some different teams, I feel like learning from all those people, places, and universities has kind of molded me into who I am today.
Yeah, you mentioned the Kent State aspect of it. Did you have any kind of relationship with Sean Lewis or Caleb before? Sometimes it helps to have those pre-built relationships sometimes when you're out there applying or looking for a role.
Yeah, 100%. So, I didn't know Coach Lewis personally. I knew Caleb personally, and it
Yeah.
was, so our relationship was somewhat pat and go. Like we would say what's up and see each other at the symposium and things like that. We had never like had a lunch or anything like that. But I think we would both say like we respected each other from afar, right? And when you're recruiting against somebody for so long, you just
Yeah.
naturally kind of get to know them and how they operate really
Mhm.
well. Like, it's been fun. Like he was at Notre Dame and I was at Michigan for a couple of years, usually recruiting the same prospects at very similar universities.
Yeah.
So we've gone back and forth about some of those players a little bit, and then to your point on Coach Lewis, no, didn't know him personally, but obviously at Akron, I studied that staff at Kent State extensively, and seeing what they were able to do with the resources that they had, and how they developed players in the MAC. It was really impressive, and so then when this opportunity became available, I was reached out to and started to kind of really do some more deep dives and kind of homework and studying Coach Lewis and the staff. It was pretty clear to see why they were able to have the success that they had and develop the players that they did, and getting to know Coach very quickly, just throughout this process. It was really fun and just a really nice breath of fresh air to get to know him and how he operates.
Yeah, you talked about your kind of, your Michigan and Oregon experience, Caleb at Notre Dame. How much does that help San Diego State having you guys in the room, being at those places where you won a national championship or you played for a national championship, and kind of what you guys bring to San Diego State in that regard?
I think the logo on your chest is somewhat overblown. Like at the end of the day, it isn't what's going to win games for us here at San Diego State. But at places that do things really well, no matter what the level of college football is, right? It's like you learn the recipe. And us having success in recruiting here compared to some of those places, right? You learn the recipe, and maybe it's different quantities of ingredients, but at the end of the day, you're building the same thing. And I feel like from the places that Caleb and I have been at all levels of college football, you learn how to build a program the right way. You learn how to build your own identity and philosophy of recruiting. And again, it's been really fun taking everything that kind of we have at these other spots and almost just making kind of a big smoothie of it to try to win games here for the Aztecs.
Yeah, you've been on campus now maybe about 2 months. You got to take in
Yeah.
spring camp. So what was your, I guess, impression of what you saw on the field over those 15 practices?
Yeah, I've been super impressed. I've been really impressed with our players and our staff. These guys are really hard workers. And the thing that I heard from afar about San Diego State is that obviously it's in San Diego, right? The weather's terrific, go to the beach. Like these are guys that just love football. They love to compete. They came here because of how San Diego can help them become pros, right? Rather than coming here for San Diego in itself, which is a huge distinction that's certainly going to matter for us in acquiring talent. So it's been really fun to see. It's been fun to see guys kind of jockeying for position. It's been really fun to see the coaches pushing these guys to their fullest potential. These guys are extremely active on the practice field. They do a great job coaching the entire roster throughout practice. So I've really enjoyed it. Again, there's going to be a lot more jockeying as we move forward, and there's going to be a lot of guys that continue to have their ups and downs as we get closer to the season. But I think again, part of the reason why I took this job, right? Like,
Mhm.
the coaches and the personnel staff and really the entire sports staff have done an awesome job at putting together a competitive roster.
The one of the biggest changes in college football this year is no spring portal. So that's probably
That's
why
right.
you're sitting down, able to talk to me right
Yeah,
now.
no doubt. That's why I don't have bags under my eyes, Andre.
Um, So what is your focus now? Is it high school class of 2027? Are you still looking at maybe mid-year guys who didn't get picked up in a winter portal? Like what is the main focus right now for you guys?
Right. So it's a lot of different things, right? To your point, it's preparing for June recruiting when we get into our camps and our big official visits and trying to kind of, fortify the 27 class. It's preparing a lot of processes that,
Mhm.
we're going to implement as we get into the fall in a lot of different ways that we acquire talent, both high school, junior college, and in the portal. And again, the other side of it is continuing to learn the university, learn the place, getting a sense of how do we win, getting a sense of what are the best methods for us in basically bringing Aztec football to the community of San Diego and getting people really throughout any part of the city involved in what we're doing. So there's been a lot of different things that we're doing. Like, it's almost like you get certain projects that
Hmm.
are kind of long-term projects that you're not really going to be able to start at some point during spring ball. And so then the second that's done, you think you're going to get a second to breathe. Now you're like starting all those, and you really don't have a second to breathe all over again.
Hmm.
So it's been a lot of that and work in a lot of different areas. And again, like the beautiful part about my role and how we're structuring things from a personnel standpoint here is we have the ability to touch a lot of different aspects of the process, again, both from the general manager, top down roster philosophy, strategy work, but also to the day-to-day ID, eval, communication on campus, right? All that other stuff. So I've been kind of touch and go in a lot of different areas, just trying to kind of, do a good job and progress us forward.
I think a lot of people on the outside, fans, kind of believe that like recruiting is all about just talking numbers and money. But there's more to that, right? The coaching staff, the development. Um, what do you think is the biggest factor, biggest strength that San Diego State has that you guys, pitch to potential recruits, whether it's a high school guy or a transfer?
Yeah, 100%. It's our staff, our program, our people, and our track of player development. There's a lot of unbelievable things about this university and this football program that I learned,
Hmm.
pretty quickly upon getting here in terms of the players that we've put in the NFL and the amount of all conference players San Diego State's had and the winning tradition that the program has, the success that the program's had academically, and the amount of pride that people here take in the university. Truthfully, it's really inspiring, and it makes you want to do a good job for all these people that put their heart and their soul into the San Diego State Aztecs, both on campus and in the community. And it's been really, really good to kind of just look at and see. I've really enjoyed being a part of it so far. That's really our biggest strength. And then, to your other point, Andre, about the financial side of things, that's certainly a part of it. But it's definitely not all everything that it's kind of made out to be. To your point, it was interesting. I tell you a little story. I was on the phone with an NFL agent. This might have been in 2024, I think, and he was
Hmm.
kind of debating whether or not to take the journey into the high school side and start representing players. And he was just asking me questions about that world, trying to see if it was the right fit for him. And, the one thing he told me on the phone that I didn't really know at the time was he said that the really interesting part that NFL agents are starting to notice is how often like money comes up with these families. And in the NFL, a free agent picks their next home for the highest financial offer, he said around 30 to 35% of the time, you know, and that's something that, especially over time of NIL, as these families are doing a better job at getting a lot more educated about the process, and as as
Yeah.
as people on the other side of it, we're doing a better job at getting a lot more educated about the process. You're seeing that be the be all end all, less and less and less, and more so the same reasons why that percentage existed as it did in the NFL, which is again for those guys that are in their late 20s 30s, right? Where do you want to live? Where does your family want to live? Where do you think you'll be able to win without your NFL career? Like all
Yeah.
this other stuff. What team do you want to be a part of? What system? And again, that's mattering a lot more. And no matter who you are at whatever level of college football that you're a part of, you're never going to count on being the highest bidder all the time. Whatever school it is, you're never going to be the highest bidder. You have to learn a sustainable way of acquiring prospects when you're not the highest bidder. You just
Yeah.
have to, because if you're going to try to be the highest bidder all the time, it's not sustainable, and you're probably not going to be working at your most efficient way.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you think, if there is one, what's the biggest challenge that you face when you're talking to recruits um in this process? Obviously San Diego State's not a Power Four team, um, but just in the general sense, where do you see somewhere where you now that you're here want to improve?
Yeah, I think it's always kind of finding fits, right? Like that's the goal. San Diego is an unbelievable place to live. I'm learning that firsthand, right? But like
Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword, right? Like the pros of it are obviously we're going to be able to get in the game with players that maybe we weren't before because San Diego is such a desirable place to live, right? The con is that again, we're not here to live in paradise, right? We're here to win football games. And
Yeah.
we don't want guys that are here just because of the sunshine and the beach and things of that nature, right? Like we want the players that are going to use the positive weather for recovery, right? Like things like that, that again are going to help them on the football field, right? Their sun is going to help with mental health, right? Like that's a big
Hmm.
scientific study that's genuine data that you can use to, right, support winning on the football field. Like finding those guys that, again, like you got to love ball. You got to want to win. You got to be a part of a team, or you got to want to be a part of a team. So finding those is always going to be the most difficult because again, it takes time, and sometimes recruiting is again a lot more speed
Yeah.
dating, pat and go. You're getting to know different guys, very quickly. And so, how do you efficiently find out who are the right fits for you is always going to be a big challenge.
Yeah. You had, I kind of mentioned the mid-year guys. Is mid-year transfers still a thing, or is everyone pretty much kind of found their spot for fall?
I'll put it this way, like there may be a couple guys going to different spots here and there throughout the
Yeah.
course of, the summer, but if you're still in desperate need of something, then you probably didn't prepare adequately the first
Yeah.
time around, right? And from Caleb and mine's perspective, that's the beauty of only having one portal window. Is it
Right.
in a lot of ways favors the staffs that attack it with a purpose, with urgency, with some sort of strategic identity, some sort of plan for what happens when you go from A to B. And again, some sort of plan for do you have foresight into how your roster is going to look in spring ball? Right, this happens for every program where you think
Yeah.
you're great at one position and you go through spring ball and you're really could have used some help there, right? Or you think that you're really shorthanded at one position and you get out of spring, you're like, wow, we're doing a pretty solid job there,
Yeah.
right? Like how well do you know your roster so quickly after the season? Can you mentally reset? Boom, I'm on to next year, and this is where I think we're at. Because again, if you're not prepared for that, then you're going to see things during spring ball you didn't expect to see, and now you're going to have needs that you didn't necessarily have the foresight to see before the window. Those are the teams that are going to struggle in the winter portal window. Whereas again, we're always going to be somewhat arrogantly think that we're going to be a team that's going to be prepared, strategic, and ready
Yeah.
to go. So why not support a system that favors those teams?
Yeah, the biggest, I guess news from San Diego State world was Chris Johnson getting drafted in the first
Heck
round.
yeah.
Not just because he's a San Diego State guy, but he's a guy who stayed all 4 years.
And
He's a
from
guy
San
who
Diego, I mean,
he
it's been
gave up.
awesome getting to know Chris. Just, sorry
Yeah.
not to cut you off, but obviously I wasn't here with him throughout his four
Mhm.
seasons, but I've just gotten to know him throughout the course of him coming by in the pro day. And, he was training in San Diego and he was around with, our guys kind of just chopping it up with him after spring practices and things of that nature before he would get in the workout. And he's been an awesome kid to get to know. And it's been really easy, even for someone like myself that, again, was never going through games of Chris Johnson, just to root for him and get behind him. Just an amazing guy. Great representation for the program as well.
For sure. I mean, he's a guy that we know, gave up some high offers to stay at San Diego State for his senior year. Lucky Sutton, is kind of in that same boat. He talked about in the offseason about how, you know, he wants to make it to the NFL. He wants to get that contract, and he thinks that the better thing for him long term is to stay at San Diego State. Um, how do you guys use that to your advantage recruiting wise? Because obviously Lucky Sutton hasn't made it to the NFL yet, but Chris Johnson is first round draft pick. So how do you guys kind of incorporate that into the recruiting pitch?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, that's something that the guys need to see themselves and want to be a part of. The
Yeah,
proof is in the pudding there, and it's on the players that we're recruiting to see that and say, I want to be a part of it. We shouldn't have to really convince guys that, becoming a first round draft pick is something that's desirable, right? Like it's on them to wherever they're going, whether it's here or another institution. I would tell any high school prospect that may be listening to, you should be doing your research on all these programs. Don't rely on a coaching staff to tell you all this type of stuff. And make sure our kids are aware of that all the time.
yeah,
And again, like it just speaks to what we talked about a little bit ago as far as why the financial aspect isn't becoming the be all end all in a lot of these recruitments. Like maybe it's out there that people think it goes like that is because again, those are examples of two guys that had their sights on again what they came to college to do. If you were
yeah,
going to ask all the very successful college football players in the world, right? Why did you start playing football? I don't think you would get money being a really popular first answer, right? They play because they
Yeah.
love the game. There's a lot of professions that you have a lot more likelihood of being a millionaire than playing football, right?
Yeah.
Because of so many things out of players' control that can go wrong. Those guys saw the end goal, and all they were thinking about is how can I be the best player and person and student possible to get to my end goals. That's what they strive for. And when you strive for something and
Yeah.
you're good at what you do, right? You get a little blessing from the Lord and you're really good, you're normally going to get there. So it's sometimes that's just kind of, again, how it goes to people that have their minds in the right places rather than guys that, kind of have their minds in two different spots really as they go and pursue their goal.
Yeah. Um, Overall, where do you think San Diego State is without talking numbers in terms of where they are, just in terms of NIL budget and within, the Pac-12? Obviously, that's a new conference. You got some new conference mates, some existing conference mates. So where do you assess that?
It's one of those things where you're always pushing for more, right? Like
Mhm.
at any level of football, no matter where you are, you always want to be a little bit higher. But again, the other side of it is it's our job to be efficient with the resources we have. The university does a great job in pouring into us. The city of San Diego does a great job of pouring into us. Like our athletic department does a great job of pouring into us. We have everything that we need to be successful. It's on us to do a good job.
Did you play football growing up?
I played in high school. Played in
What
high school,
position
not
did you
very good,
play?
or else I would be on the other side of the coin here. I was not.
What position did you play?
I played tight end.
Okay. You said you went to Michigan, but is that where you're from originally? Where's
No, so I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. So,
okay,
that's where I went as an undergraduate student.
got it.
I wanted to, play Division II or Division III football, and I ended up not really doing that. I ended up just kind of going to Michigan as a student, knowing I wanted to get involved somehow. But no, I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside of DC. Again, couldn't be further from San Diego. Part of the reason why I love this profession is
Hmm.
I never thought one day I would know people or live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to be able to, kind of see where this game takes you sometimes.
What are some fun things you've done in San Diego? So if you've had the time to settle and actually maybe go do some fun stuff.
Yeah, truthfully, I know I'll get a little bit more time once we get out of these,
Yeah.
this month of June recruiting. But the beach is my favorite place in the world. So whenever we kind of had a day off, my girlfriend and I try to go to the beach,
Hmm.
try to go to some new restaurants. Been to a Padres game, just trying to kind of get around and explore. And it's funny,
Yeah.
I have some friends that have given me a ton of recommendations and places to go to and walk and see. And I've gone through about maybe 1/15th of them. So I've
Yeah.
quite a bit of work to do.
All right. Last part of the interview. It's some rapid fire non-football related questions. You ready for
Yeah, hit
those?
me.
What's your favorite food?
Favorite food, scallops. I'm a big seafood guy.
Scallops. Wow, I have not heard that answer before, but that I love scallops
Love
too.
seafood.
Nice. Well, you're from Maryland, right? So is that
Yeah, they
it's
got they
crab
do
cakes?
crab nice out there. Yeah, they
Nice.
got good seafood.
What about favorite musical artist?
Ooh, favorite musical. I listen, honestly, I'm all over the map. I'll
Hmm.
listen to any genre you name it, I'll listen to it. Maybe outside of classical. I don't know much classical, but literally everything else
Okay.
I'm game.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I'll go really any Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell movie.
Okay. What about TV show?
The GOAT, SpongeBob, nothing better.
Oh, wow.
The
Nice.
GOAT.
And then favorite professional athlete, either growing up or currently?
Ooh, favorite professional athlete. There's so many good ones. I would say Terrell Owens.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
T.O.'s an interesting guy, so I'd love to obviously meet someday. He is just growing up, like I just remember him being the first athlete that I ever remember saying, like, oh, he is just like so much better than everybody else uh,
Yeah.
as I was growing up.
Yeah, I mean, talent-wise, he was off the charts. I think some of his comments and antics maybe off the field got him a little less, as the years have gone by, but talent-wise, he was up there with any other wide receiver from his era.
Absolutely. And I think people, like obviously a lot of that stuff was what it was.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be different if we were, pouring into athletes now or like we were now,
Yeah,
but I just think that again, people looking at that and not how much talent he has, it's a little bit overshadowing just how truly good he was as a player. Like, if
yeah,
you're a kid, you ever want to just like turn on his highlights, was unbelievable.
yeah. Well, awesome, Sam. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy time. Let's, 365. I'm sure for in your profession, there's never a quiet moment, but appreciate you taking some time to join us and welcome to San Diego.
Awesome, Andre. Thanks so much for having me, man.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yep, you too.
All right, guys, that was my interview with Sam Popper, Associate General Manager, the newest staff member for San Diego State, as they are gearing up for the 2026 season, the inaugural season in the Pac-12. Exciting times coming off a 9-win season, a big turnaround from a 3-win season to a to a 9-win season. Um, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, there is no spring portal, so it's a little bit quiet. Sam mentioned that there's a lot of focus on high school recruiting and a lot of the visits in June from the class of 2027. So there's a lot going on in that regard, but pretty much the roster is set. For any of you that went to the spring game slash scrimmage, um, you saw, a lot of young guys playing, a lot of opportunities for guys who are lower on the depth chart or are brand new to the team. They get opportunities. I think some of the position group that at least shined were the wide receivers, especially the true freshmen. You had Derek Stevenson, Carson Deal, Deshaun Davis, those guys making plays. I think Stevenson was the only one that caught a touchdown on a nice play from Stone Saunders. So overall, there's it's you. I don't think you can make over generalization from a scrimmage on a practice field. A lot of guys, Lucky Sutton, Jaden Donegal, they did obviously play some snaps, but Tonalu, a lot of guys are injured coming back from last season who are still out in spring. So you didn't see Jordan Napier, Jacob Bostic, Tana Lutuli, Joe Borjon was out. Um, I think the biggest news probably coming from that day was seeing DeLaShawn Staley in a bulky knee brace, because there was no news reported prior to that day about him being injured. It's been obviously confirmed that he tore his ACL and will be out for the season. Staley was a guy who jumped into the portal, but ended up coming out and coming back to San Diego State. Whether that was, not being happy with the offers or the interest he was getting, or whether San Diego State, came in with a bigger offer, an offer he couldn't pass up. Not 100% sure where that is. It's probably a little bit of both. But he was supposed to be that one returning veteran from a top 10, top 15 defense from last season who was going to be that leader of the defense, at least the secondary, only starter returning. And he's going to be out. So I think Demetrius Sumler, his first year as defensive coordinator, already had a tough job trying to fill Chris Johnson, Bryce Phillips, Trey White, Ryan Henderson roles. Now he's going to have another layer to that, trying to fill a veteran secondary role. But I think they brought in talented guys. They had guys who were behind the starters last year that returned. Um, Staley had a good year, but I don't know if I would say he was an elite safety. And obviously could have taken that leap this year because of his experience and because of his familiarity with a similar defense that Rob Orich ran, and probably Demetrius someone's going to run. But I think this gives an opportunity for one of the other guys to step up and see how they could do. So that was, I think, the biggest news. And maybe it's in a negative light, but it's not necessarily a doom and gloom. Let me know what you think, whether on social media, comment on this YouTube or podcast link. Like, let me know what you thought of San Diego State's performance, or you know, how they did in the spring scrimmage. If there was any players uh, liked what you saw, didn't like what you saw, or guys who maybe we didn't see but are going to be big contributors in the fall. We hope to be back more this summer with some interviews of players and coaches, trying to ramp that back up as we get into the fall camp in August. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Make sure to hit the like button on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your host, Andre Hagverdian.